Hey, my friends. Welcome to Real Talk with Mochio. I'm your host, Gordon A. Mochio, the G-Man, as they call me. Before we begin, I'd like to remind everyone that the views, opinions, and statements expressed on Real Talk with Mochio are those of the host and the guests of the podcast and do not necessarily reflect the views, opinions, and official positions of Gordon Vincent Associates LLC, doing business as Mochio Media, or any of its subsidiaries, affiliates, or employees. And folks, as I do before each episode, before embarking on any great undertaking, I'd like to thank my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ for blessing me with the opportunity to spend some time with you. And I truly appreciate you listening to the show. And please be sure to like Real Talk with Mochio on Facebook and YouTube. And don't forget to follow and subscribe. Okay, let's get started. This is a special spin-off episode of Real Talk with Mochio. I'm leaving the usual track of social and political commentating, and I'd like to talk to you about being prepared, emergency preparedness, and how to survive a major emergency. I want to talk about something serious, something that affects family, every household, every community. What happens when the systems we depend on stop working and normal no longer applies? No power, no water, no fuel deliveries, no internet. Emergency services capabilities drastically reduced. And folks, I'm not talking about the 1 or 2 hour power outages that we all have to deal with, or even day-long power outages we all have to deal with. I'm talking about a major event, such as an attack on our nation's grid, as I write about in my book, Gridlock, Grid Down. Think it can't happen? It certainly can, ladies and gentlemen. There are rogue nations out there and fanatics that advocate death to America. They chant death to America, death to Americans. And folks, these people, they don't value life the way we do. As a matter of fact, they look forward to the afterlife. And they truly feel that if they die for their cause or to better their cause, they'll have an eternity of happiness. And folks, people who love death more than they love life, that's a big problem. This isn't about fear, folks. This is about responsibility to yourself and your loved ones. Now, I consider myself a realist. And as such, many of you may disagree or not give much credibility to what I'm about to talk about. Some may consider me an alarmist. To them I say, 'tis better to be prepared for the worst than carried to your final resting place by 6. Folks, that smiley neighbor or smiley neighbors who pass by your house every day on the way home or to work and drive by and wave and smile, well, I got news for you. They may not be so smiley and friendly when the crap hits the fan. When it comes to survival, folks, there are no friends. People work cooperatively. That is until the resources are few. Then it's all about survival. Being prepared doesn't make you paranoid. It makes you smart. Tonight, we're going to discuss What happens at the onset of an emergency or an attack on our nation? Power grid, for example, or even worse. Now, folks, the first thing is, like I said before, normal no longer applies. The power's out. Cell phones are very limited, and the cell phone systems will be overwhelmed. Communication towers, hospitals, emergency services, supermarkets, pharmacies, and so forth, who are running on emergency power. Well, I got news for you, folks. Sooner or later, they're going to run out of fuel, because the fuel depots will not be able to keep up with the demand, nor the delivery services. Why? Well, because their workers will probably become concerned about their loved ones and maybe even leave the workplace. But at the very least, the depots, the main hubs that the trucks go up, get their fuel, and come back, they're not going to be able to keep up with the demand. Eventually, what's going to happen? Grocery store, meats, fish, frozen foods will soon begin to spoil, and it won't be long before the looting begins, especially in urban areas. Now, municipal water systems, they're going to fail eventually. And when they fail, they lack the ability, especially with raw sewage, they lack the ability to move the pipes and transport the sewage into the main treatment facilities. So the sewage treatment plants are going to start to back up. And they can only hold so much before they may have to bypass into water bodies. That means introduce raw sewage into water bodies to prevent it from overflowing from the manholes into the streets. Now, along the way to the plant, sewage pumping stations and lift stations may fail. And then you may have raw sewage spilling into the streets and overflowing out of manhole covers. Think about it. No fresh water, no power, lack of communication, raw sewage backing up into the streets. Roadways in gridlock due to heavy volume and the failure of traffic control devices. And guess what, folks? The cops aren't going to be standing there on the corners. The police agencies are going to be overwhelmed. Fire, EMS overwhelmed. They're going to be prioritizing their calls. Well, you get the picture. So what can you do? Well, you could begin to prepare now and hope that day will never come when you have to use it. People, you don't bug out, you bug in. You don't jump in your cars and head for the hills, because that ain't going to work. Like I said, there's going to be gridlock. The major highways are going to be gridlocked. You're not going to get too far. You bug in, stay where you are. Well, that's what I would do. And prepare. Well, you might be thinking to yourself, how do I prepare? What do I do? I don't want to go for those expensive freeze-dried programmed meals I see on television. Well, folks, let me tell you something. I say the same thing, but I think the time has come when you have to consider it. So let's take a look at the food. Because when people get hungry and people watch their family members get hungry, they become dangerous. In an emergency, grocery stores empty fast. Trucks stop rolling. Shelves don't get restocked. And that's reality, folks. In a real national emergency, that's what can happen. So consider purchasing a supply of emergency food. Now, there are two types that I know of, and I'm no expert, but I can tell you what I know about them. The first are meals ready to eat, or MREs. Now, those of you who were Boy Scouts or are currently Boy Scouts or Scout leaders, you know what I'm talking about. MREs are like I said, meals ready to eat. The beautiful thing about them is they don't need water or heat. They can be consumed as is. They last for years, not anywhere near as long as freeze-dried meals, the plans that you see on the television. Now, as far as the ones you see on TV, they need to be prepared with water, or many of them need to be prepared with water and heat for best results. But they last 20 to 30 years. They're lightweight. They don't need refrigeration. All you do is add water and a little heat, and voila. You can also store various canned foods, beans, rice, tuna, yada, yada, yada. Just remember to be mindful of the expiration date and rotate them every year or so. Now, folks, I recommend, or I suggest, like I said, I'm no doctor or expert here, but I recommend at least 30 days of food per person. 90 days is even better. And don't look at it buying these foods as a waste of money, because they have a long, long shelf life. You don't need gourmet foods, folks. You need nutrition and stability. So what about the water? The water. Now, some may say, well, the municipal water supplies, they can fail because I have well water. Well, yeah, you have well water, and that's dependent upon or contingent upon that you have power to draw that water out of the ground. Now, if you're fortunate enough to have an emergency generator and you have a supply of water, yeah, guess what? You're doing pretty good. But guess what? You're also a target, because those without water will hear that generator running in the distance, and they'll be sure to come around and look for some water and some benefit. Now, folks, you can live weeks without food, but you can't live long without water. So you should store at least 2 gallons per person each day, because you have to take into consideration hygiene and proper hydration. Minimum supplies I would keep on hand is 7 to 14 days, more if you can. And there are many ways that you can look up on how you can store water responsibly, and I suggest you explore that possibility. But storage isn't enough. Depending on where you're drawing your water from and how bad it gets, you may need filtration. You may need purification tablets, and maybe even some household bleach can go a long way in helping you purify your water. You also may need to boil your water, so you have to have the means to do so. Medicine. First aid. In a major emergency, national emergency, you may have to be your own first responder. Hospitals may be overwhelmed, or they will be overwhelmed. Ambulances delayed, pharmacies unavailable or overwhelmed. You should back up your prescriptions now. And I know what I do is when every now and again I'll get an extra prescription, and I just hold on to it. And at the expiration date, I'll dispose of it properly, and that's how I tend to roll. But you should keep an ample supply of prescriptions, because in a really major national emergency, you may not be able to get your meds. And even if you go to hospitals are going to run out. You need to keep first aid kits. Of course, you need to do that. You can look online to how properly stock a first aid kit. You need to keep over-the-counter pain relievers, allergy meds, stomach medications, fever reducers. And Come on, folks. Take your time. And those who have not yet done so, learn basic first aid and take a CPR class. It can save lives. What about power and gear? Well, let's talk about power. No electricity for some mean no heat. No cooking. No communication. No charging. When power goes, everything follows. So it's good to have a standby generator, solar generator, small solar generator, battery backup, or a battery bank with plenty of batteries. Lighting is safety, whether you have LEDs, and I have several LED headpieces that I keep just in the summer when I'm walking around the yard and the area, I just keep it lit. Flashlights. And of course, the radio stations, when their emergency power and emergency fuel supplies are gone, they're not transmitting. Your only ways of communication will probably be the emergency broadcast system sponsored by the government. I recommend everyone purchase an inexpensive crank radio. Needs no batteries. You just crank, and you can listen to whatever broadcasts that are happening and instructions. If you have a small propane stove, it'll be good until the propane runs out. Keep an ample supply of firewood. A lot of people have chimeneas that they can even cook on. Firewood's very important. Keep cash, because ATM machines will probably be down and the card readers probably will not work. And what about security, community? Well, let's talk about that. In my book, Gridlock, Grid Down, available at the Amazon Kindle bookstore, it presents a perfect example of that, on how a private community comes together and makes it through some very dire times. But when it comes to security, some people are good, some people are not. Now, folks, you have the right to keep and bear arms. Cameras are another thing that you should have an ample supply of. Today, they make a variety of cameras. Many of them work on battery. I have several of them around the perimeter of my property. Phones. When cell phones don't work, satellite phones will probably work. Ham radios are another choice. Get your basic ham radio license, and it's quick, it's not expensive, and it'll give you the rights to work on certain bands of ham frequencies. Have a family communication and action plan in place. Know your neighbors and be vigilant, especially if you have a generator. You don't want to run that generator all day. You don't want to run it all night. You want to run it when you need it. And be advised that that noise travels. And light travels well at night. People can see a well-lit or the smallest light from great distances. So I would take care when you run your generator and remain vigilant for looters and those who would do you harm. So people, let me be clear. This is not about being paranoid. This is about being responsible. You insure your home. You insure your car. Preparation is insurance for your family. Start small. One kit, 1 week of food at a time. Then build. Prepared people don't panic. Stay ready. Stay strong. God bless you all, and God bless the United States of America. Until next time, my friends, have a good day.